Meeting of the committee will come to order. Before I make any specific comments on today's hearing on FDA, I want to say a few words about an important initiative this committee is undertaking. One of the most important debates in modern politics is the role of government. Some believe in the smallest government possible and live by the old joke that the scariest words imaginable are, "I'm from the federal government and I've come to help." I and others have a fundamentally different view. I think government can be a tremendous instrument for good, and I've seen it help Americans in countless ways. The Social Security system transformed this country. Landmark health and environmental laws have improved the quality of life for millions of Americans. Regulatory and consumer agencies have made financial stability, basic safety precautions a part of our everyday life. In this regard, FDA has had a remarkable record of achievements. It has been, and by and large remains, an agency with highly qualified and dedicated staff doing a big job under difficult circumstances. It's our job to ensure that it has the resources to continue to perform with competence. We have reason to be concerned, to examine the strengths and weaknesses of this agency in the light of ever-increasing demands, and to ensure that it remains strong. Because we know from other areas that without proper support or without deliberate strengthening of the agency and support for the agency's leadership, or without making sure there's not unwarranted outside interference, things can change. We need only look at FEMA. FEMA once was one of the most prominent and well-respected agencies of government. But something has gone very wrong in recent years. We saw government at its worst during the Hurricane Katrina disaster. FEMA completely failed American citizens. We saw a breakdown again at Walter Reed Hospital in the deplorable conditions provided to our bravest Americans. And we've seen profound problems from government handling in the Iraq War, where there was flawed basic intelligence to failure to supply our troops with the right armor and equipment. In all these cases, we know that incompetent government can have deadly consequences. So one of the most important responsibilities for our committee is to understand what's gone wrong, how did some of the best government agencies become so weak, and we need to work together in a bipartisan way to get government back on track. I know colleagues on both sides of the aisle share my view on this. We don't want government programs to be ineffective. We want them to be models of excellence. So over the next year, our committee is going to hold a series of hearings on making government effective again by looking at the performance of a number of different agencies. We start today with FDA. By the end of these hearings, we'll have a better idea of the impact of budget cuts and cronyism on current problems. And I expect we'll have legislative solutions that would ensure taxpayers get the government they deserve. Today we start this effort. We are in the fortunate position of looking first at an agency that has not been decimated by the pressures placed upon it or the lack of resources made available to it. But there have been a number of public health crises, from the belated withdrawal of Vioxx to deadly bacteria in spinach to contaminated pet food. These have revealed alarming cracks in the foundation of FDA's ability to protect the American public. The warning signs are clear. FDA is an agency in crisis. We need to act now and to learn from the vast experience of those who have managed the agency through the years. And today we're fortunate to have an unprecedented assembly of experts, including 3 former FDA commissioners and the current commissioner, Dr. Andrew von Eschenbach. In addition, 2 former commissioners, whose schedules did not allow them to be here in person, will submit written testimony. I especially want to thank the commissioner for accommodating the committee's request that he testify on the same panel as the other witnesses. I recognize it's the administration's policy for governmental officials to testify on panels without non-governmental witnesses, and today's arrangement is not intended to nullify that policy. Since this hearing presents a highly unusual circumstance, gathering the former and current head of a single agency, we appreciate the Commissioner's departure from the general agency practice today. Thank you very much. FDA oversees thousands of products so routine that we don't even notice them. Oatmeal, aspirin, even microwaves and cell phones. FDA also oversees products for the times in our life that are anything but routine. Days we need emergency surgery, chemotherapy, or a blood transfusion. FDA's mission is vast and daunting, but not impossible. The agency's history is full of success stories, whether it was protecting consumers from rotten meat in the early 1900s, saving lives by refusing to let thalidomide on the market in the 1950s, or speeding AIDS drugs to patients in the 1990s. But as I have said, recent years have brought signs of trouble at the FDA, and at this hearing we hope to learn the causes of these problems, and we'll look at four major areas of concern. The first and most critical issue facing FDA is simple: resources. The agency, in my opinion, is vastly underfunded, relying on an already shrinking budget to tackle a rapidly expanding list of responsibilities. In fact, FDA's entire budget for fiscal year 2007 is less than the budget for Montgomery County, Maryland schools, the whole system, for this year. A second major concern is scientific integrity at the agency. In recent years, key decisions at FDA have been made under the cloud of real or perceived political interference, undermining FDA's most basic foundation. A third area of concern is enforcement. Investigations by our staff and other analysts have found that across the agency, from post-market drug trials to drug advertising to the handling of fresh produce, FDA's enforcement activity has declined. Strong enforcement is a critical component of FDA's work, and I'm concerned to see how it has atrophied in recent years. And finally, we must look closely at FDA's legal authorities to examine whether its governing provisions are outdated or inadequate. One prominent example is in the area of food regulation, where our standards are literally a century old. On the topic of food safety, I want to acknowledge that this morning the FDA announced that it will create a new position for food protection at the agency. This idea of a food safety czar seems like a reasonable idea, and I support FDA in taking steps to increase the priority of food safety at the agency. I hope that as the agency begins to undertake long-term strategic thinking, I think the need remains for an immediate response to the current crisis, and hope that today's announcement will be followed by concrete and effective action. For all its challenges, FDA remains one of our nation's greatest assets. I call this hearing because I believe in this agency, and I want to see it work. As the primary oversight committee of the House, it is the committee's responsibility to identify and begin to address the urgent challenges facing the FDA, and we'll see in other hearings other agencies as well. I hope that this series of hearings will lead to real solutions for FDA and for government, restoring the full capacity and preparing this agency and others to serve its critical mission many years into the future. I thank our witnesses for being here today. I look forward to their testimony. But before we call on them and recognize them, I want to have the ranking member of our committee, Mr. Davis, give him time to make an opening statement.
No, thank you, Mr. Waxman. I know how important these issues have been to you over the years, and you really hit it on the head. It's about governance. Some on my side just think we ought to have very little government. Let's starve it. Let's not give it the funding. There are others who think more government better, that we can accomplish more, but we don't focus enough on the governance issues, and that is getting it right and making it efficient. I want to thank you for holding today's hearing to consider the critical mission of the FDA and the many challenges the agency